Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to another weekend. Let's go. Time for more adventure. Come on, guys. I got my coffee. We're going to go get our assignments. We're going to have some fun. All right. First one on the menu. Beautiful 321 Neo. Let's get this thing ready. It's going to go E-tops. It's flying to Hawaii. Let's go. Do a quick little walk around. Make sure everything's A-okay. Drop the gear door. Make sure the barking dog is still up there. As I mentioned before, this is an Airbus A321 Neo, and this is how we drop the gear doors. Pretty much all major aircraft have this. In order to drop the gear doors, we pull a specific handle which releases the uplock. We have to drop these gear doors for maintenance purposes. A few components on this gear door itself. So on the left, that little knuckle is the uplock roller. That is what gets engaged into the uplock actuator and holds the door up. Those things right there you're seeing towards the middle, those are called fixed ramps. So let's say there was an emergency and the landing gear needed to be gravity dropped, or we call it a free fall extension. Pilots will either turn a lever or flip a switch depending on the type of aircraft, and the landing gear will drop under its own weight. That's what we call it, a gravity drop or a free fall extension. Now these ramps are there to make sure that the main landing gear does not get caught on the landing gear doors during a free fall extension. The gear door also has proximity sensors and the hydraulic actuator that brings the gear door up, as well as steps for us maintenance to climb up there. Now let's take a look inside of the wheel well itself. Nice and neat, isn't it? Much cleaner than the 737. It's a lot more organized and it looks much nicer, a lot more room to work in my opinion. There it is, there's your famous barking dog right there. Those rods that you're seeing are called torque tubes. They are for the flap control system. Now this is a very important component that you're looking at. That is called the PCU, Power Control Unit. It is a hydromechanical unit. Its primary job is to supply mechanical power to the flap transmission system. It has two hydraulic motors. Once power is provided, the torque shaft and the gearboxes transmit the mechanical power from the PCU to the offset gearboxes of the actuators. Fancy way of saying it will turn those tubes and drop the flaps via transmissions. Watch, I'll actually show you how it looks in action. As you can see, a pretty intricate system. There's also another very important system this ties into. It's called the WTB, wingtip brake. It's a form of protection for the flaps. It is a electrohydraulic pressure on brake. What it basically does, it prevents the flaps from going off symmetry. Meaning off symmetry, you don't want one side of the flap going down further than the other. You want them both coming down at the same rate. The other protection it does is in case you have a runaway flap. Uncontrollable deployment where it's going full flaps down will lock the flaps in a very particular position and stop it. There's circuit breakers tied into this that are only for maintenance. And these are so pilots don't play with them. Pilots, do not play with these circuit breakers. Bad things will happen. Only maintenance gets to touch these. But yeah. As we continue our tour of this 321 Neo wheel well, next you're going to see this thing. That's a reservoir. That particular one is for the green system. There's two others, one for the yellow, one for the blue. This is where hydraulic fluid lives. Here's a lovely diagram for you, and this depicts every single hydraulic system and what they control. Feel free to pause it and take a look at it closely. Just take a look at the level of redundancy. It's absolutely incredible. Oh, and if you were curious how much capacity these systems have, the green system has about 100 liters, the blue system about 60 liters, the yellow system 75 liters. As we keep moving forward, you're going to see that cylindrical component right there. That is an accumulator. There's 3 of these, one for every system. It has a metal body with an outer layer of Kevlar to make it strong. It also has a bladder inside that separates nitrogen and fluid. It will keep head pressure to the reservoir, and it also keeps the system free from small changes, fluctuations in pressure. It also makes a supply of fluid available just in case there's a decrease in fluid in a system. It could also compensate for temporary decrease in pressure just in case the response time from the engine-driven pump is not enough. Usually pre-charged to around 1800 psi. Accumulator and a whole bunch of manifolds for hydraulics. Fun stuff. Next to the accumulator, you're going to find high pressure manifold as well as the PTU manifold. There's a variety of components that are attached to it, such as pressure relief valves, high pressure filters, check valves, sampling valves, and pressure transmitters. Basically distributing the fluid where it needs to go and monitoring it. As we direct our attention to the forward portion of this compartment, you will see that component, or I should say it's more of a cover. There are various amount of components in there that are related to the ACT tanks, the additional center tanks. One of the components that's inside there is a little valve or a pump. You can actually prime the pump if the ACT tanks are a bit low. This is in order to get the fuel flowing if you want to get fuel out of the ACT tanks. Additional center tanks are pretty self-explanatory. The more tanks you have, the more fuel you have, you can fly longer. The most modern 321, which is the XLR that will be debuting here pretty soon, that one is actually going to have 3 ACT tanks. Very long flight. Remember earlier I showed you on a door that uplock roller? Well, that's where it attaches. This is the uplock actuator for the main landing gear door. This is where that roller will hook into, and that's how the door stays up or gets released. Now let's take a look at the main landing gear uplock actuator. It's almost identical. Looks exactly the same, just a little bit of beefier, bigger unit, because now it's holding on to this knuckle right here. That's what's holding the landing gear up inside the wheel well. Open sesame! Opening the forward cargo pit for a quick inspection, the green light means the door is fully open and locked. What you're hearing there is the yellow electric hydraulic pump and the PTU running. 3000 psi running through there. Everything looking good. Airplane's almost ready to go. Beautiful. And of course, we got to do the Christmas trees. Next office. Oh, look at that. It's the One World livery. Nice. back into the classics. Come on. Yeah, there it is. Tight squeeze in here. All good. Let's see now. I already did the walk around outside. Everything's good to go. You guys ever know that 737s, pilots, this is where the cup holders are? It's kind of funny. If a pilot sometimes brings a oversized mug or a cup, it has a tendency to pull these cup holders out with it. Right now this one's glued in, which is good. But sometimes you'll find them loose and it pops right out. It's hilarious. They walk out with their mug or whatever, and the cup holder it goes with them. It's funny. Anyway, I don't know why I thought of that. Since we're in a flight deck, let me show you something. This is called the yaw dampener gauge. Most modern 737s don't even have this gauge. All the NGs and the Maxes, this is gone. But once in a while, on some of the older birds, you'll find this. The primary purpose of a yaw dampener is to prevent any kind of Dutch roll of the aircraft. I don't have a real airplane to show you this, but I got a little model here, so there you go. Dutch roll, this is what basically, as pilots chime in, you probably know that better than I do. Here, watch this. Basically, the airplane starts doing this. And the yaw dampener prevents this from happening because it dampens the forces of the rudder. Slippage. That's the best way I can explain it. In any case, the point of this is the gauge. The gauge shows inputs from the main yaw dampener that are shown on the yaw dampener indicator. I hope I explained that well. Again, pilots, chime in. You guys are smarter on this. You guys fly this thing. I just fix it. Another thing to show right here, this is the flap gauge. This is pretty much standard on all 737s, except on the 737 MAX. On the 737 MAX, the gauge has turned digital. And when I say digital, it's no longer there. The gauge is incorporated into one of the display screens. Last but not least, the brake accumulator pressure, which is reading 3,000 PSI, which is good. Let's talk about the nose landing gear steering system on the Airbus A320 family. The way this is controlled is by the tiller within the flight deck. This is what it looks like. There's two of them, one for the captain, one for the first officer. Maximum travel of the nose gear is usually around 74 degrees of travel. So you guys are clever, and I know somebody's going to ask this. What happens if you have dual input? Let's say if the captain and the first officer put in dual input either opposite or in the same direction, what happens? And this is how the manual reads. In an event of a simultaneous operation, the orders that the hand wheels give are algebraically added. Very cryptic, isn't it? Well, my assumption on this is it will take the average of the two inputs, and that's what you'll get. And also to make mention, you can steer with the rudder pedals, but with limited degree. About 6 degrees in each direction. Also, when the aircraft is ready to take off and is getting up to speed, to be specific 130 knots, steering is no longer available. This prevents the aircraft from having any kind of inadvertent input to the rudders or the tiller to have it get off the runway or run off the runway. Okay, back to the landing gear itself. Now, the Airbus 320 family has a very unique system because the cylinders drive a rack and pinion assembly. Most people that work on this aircraft or fly it have never seen what it looks like underneath there. Let me show you. This is with the cylinders on, and this is what it looks like with the cylinders off. Look how cool that looks. This is the rack and pinion system. This is hydraulically driven, electrically controlled. Remember, this aircraft is fly-by-wire, so no cables, no pulleys, no nothing. Here's a really good diagram that explains how this works. When the tiller is turned in either direction, electrical inputs get sent to computers. The computers then will analyze and send particular amount of fluid, hydraulic fluid, to either side of that steering jack. Those cylinders right there. It will push fluid and move that rack and pinion system along with those gears. It will move the nose gear to either direction you want. One thing I did forget to mention is when the aircraft takes off and the nose strut is all the way extended, there is a centering cam. Nose wheel will go to complete 0 degrees. That means straight. Now, why am I bringing all this stuff up? Because there's an important lesson to be learned. Do you guys remember this incident? JetBlue at LAX? Yeah, I remember it because I was there. I watched it happen right in front of my eyes. This Airbus 320 landed with its nose gear completely 90 degrees. Now I'm going to make mention of this. Don't panic. This happens time to time, but there's an interesting factor to this. I'm going to explain why it happened, but I'm also going to explain why it failed and how it failed. First, let's talk about how it failed. It failed exactly the way it was designed to fail. Sideways, completely 90 degrees. It's meant to fail like this. Well, at least that's my understanding from Airbus engineering. Even when something fails, it's meant to fail in a way where it will not damage or harm the rest of the aircraft. For example, this, a nose gear going completely sideways is the optimal way for that to fail. Because guess what? If that nose gear were to be skewed in a, let's say, 45-degree direction, that means that aircraft could potentially run off the runway. It'd rather fail completely 90 degrees and have it land like this. Does that make sense to you? Do you see the level of redundancy and safety that's implemented into aircraft systems? Even when something fails, it fails in such a way where it will still protect the aircraft. Now, that being said, let's discuss why this happened. By the way, this is not from me. This is straight from Airbus. You guys want to go look this up? This is really easy to find. safetyfirst.airbus.com. Airbus is so transparent with their safety features, and they understand that they need to be transparent and show the public why this occurs and what are the fixes. So, the culprit. The culprit is this. The shock absorber has lugs. These lugs center the steering. They basically prevent it from spinning around freely inside the housing. Investigation showed that the lug nuts had failed, and this is why the nose landing gear lost its centering position. There were various factors that Airbus discovered what was occurring. First of all, improper maintenance, improper servicing of the nose strut, but they went ahead and improved the design. They saw that the lugs are not as strong as they were. They were failing much too fast. So they improved the design by reinforcing and putting a much more beefier component. I'm not going to sit here and read you this whole manual right here, but feel free to go check it out. Once again, safetyfirst.airbus.com, and you will find this under landing with nose wheel at 90 degrees. And by the way, this isn't the first time that happened with JetBlue. It happened multiple amount of times, so it's not a common thing, but it does occur one time to time. Thing I do have to say is congratulations to those incredible pilots that landed that aircraft, the JetBlue aircraft. And by the way, every single one of them that landed that aircraft with a nose wheel at 90 degrees, my goodness, absolute proficiency. They put it straight down on the line every single time. That's what I call a proficient pilot that knows what they're doing. Up next, we got a gorgeous 787, our beautiful plastic princess, and look at that right there. Look what that is, that little fin. Looks like an antenna, but it's not an antenna. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is called a step. This has got to do with evacuation systems from the flight deck, because right next to it, as you saw, is a hatch. If there was any kind of emergency that the pilots needed to escape the flight deck and the flight deck door is blocked, they can use the hatch. Not only they can use the hatch, they can use these emergency descent devices that is right there in the ceiling of the aircraft. Other aircraft that are lower to the ground will utilize just simply ropes, but an aircraft such as this 787, which is very much up high, needs emergency descent devices. They will pull these out, pull this little step out, and then step on top of the observer seat and open this hatch. Now, I'm not going to open the hatch because this becomes an RWI item, but I want to just show it to you. They can use the descent devices that will gradually lower them down to the ground, but the whole point of the fin, or that little step, let's say the right side of the aircraft is in wreckage. Now, pilots have to go to the left side of the aircraft, correct? They can utilize that little fin as a handle, and they can wrap around the cable that's coming off of the descent device and redirect themselves to the other side of the fuselage. Very simple, very effective, and that's what it's there for. As a handle, as a step, and as a redirection device in case there is structure that is being blocked for escape. Next time you see a 787, you'll remember this, I promise. All right, let's go have some fun. We got some cars to see. As always, you know the rule. Cargo never disappoints. That is freaking awesome. That is a nice Maserati. I don't know what year this is, but this thing is gorgeous. Man, look at that. This one had to be restored. Look at that. That is so nice. Clean looking. Beautiful. There you go. What a beautiful car. And of course, they got another Tesla truck. Man, these Tesla trucks are coming through here like hotcakes. I am totally digging these wheels. That's pretty cool. Yeah, definitely a super cool car. But that's not all. There's another thing over here. Look at this. I think we remember seeing one of these before, right? It was a little bit of a... It looked different. This one looks more beefy. Another Rosvani. Apparently these things are armored vehicles for the super rich. That is nuts. Look at this thing. It looks like it can drive through a wall. Armor plated or at the bottom. That's crazy. I like the color though. Matte black. That's an angry looking car right there. Pretty cool. Definitely looks very futuristic. What do you guys think? Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, that was about it for today. I didn't see any other cars over here. Pretty awesome. And this thing right here. This looks like a 90s Mercedes. It's actually in pretty good shape. Nice. You know, I always like this body style. From what I've been reading, apparently this is a very rare Mercedes. Y'all go ahead and do your thing. Do your research. Let me know what you find out about this thing, because from what I hear, this is super rare. Well, that was always fun. Always fun to see cool cars. But as I was driving by, I noticed one of the United Birds, a 787, with its radome open, and I took the opportunity. Let's see what's inside here. Most major aircraft have pretty much the same three components that are within the radome. So, top to bottom, the first thing you're going to see on top is your ILS antenna, better known as the localizer. In the middle is the weather radar assembly. And at the bottom, that looks like a plate, that is your glide slope. All of these components assist the pilot in landing the aircraft and observing the weather patterns around them. The localizer will use signals to find the lateral deviation of the airplane position from the center line of the runway. The glide slope will find the vertical deviation of the airplane position from the normal landing glide path to the runway touchdown area. And the weather radar will make pancakes. I'm just joking, guys. It's self-explanatory. It detects the weather. That's about it. It's a very fancy and expensive Doppler 9000 or whatever. You know what I mean. A common question that gets asked is, what do you do with foreign carriers? What do they do for maintenance? Well, most foreign carriers that fly into LAX, they usually utilize contract maintenance. It's the same for my carrier. If we go to a station that we personally do not have maintenance there, we will utilize contract maintenance that is on station. Otherwise, everybody works on their respective carriers. I cannot walk up to a foreign carrier all willy-nilly and start working on their aircraft, even though if it's broken or whatever. They have their own set of guidelines, their own set of rules. I am not allowed to touch any aircraft besides my aircraft, my carrier aircraft, and vice versa. They cannot touch my aircraft. Now, there are contracts that are out there that allow certain things that other carriers will contract out other airlines or other vendors, such as contract maintenance. Then they're allowed to do it. But with supervision, there's representatives that are there from that particular airline. Otherwise, I will not touch any other carrier, and they cannot touch my aircraft either. That's the way it works. A good analogy for this would be a Mercedes mechanic going to the BMW factory and saying, hey, you want me to fix your car? You know what's going to happen then, right? They're going to kick him out of the factory. Anyway, I think you get my point. Okay, moving on. Another question that was asked. What is that pole that they put behind some aircraft? This thing right here. This is called a tail stand. Now, evolution of aircraft is very interesting because evolution of aircraft not only has got to do with the technology that's inside the aircraft, but also physically of the aircraft. For example, this 737-900 is not the same length as its predecessor. It's longer. The aircraft now is more tail heavy, especially when it's loading passengers and luggage. It's susceptible to tipping over and falling on its backside, kind of like this little mishap. Yep, aircraft did not have its tail stand on and it was unloaded improperly with passengers on board, and there was too much weight in the back. The aircraft tipped backwards. Oh, there are a multitude of aircraft that actually use this as well. Basically any aircraft that's very long. Take, for example, a 747-400 or a Dash 8. They will usually put a tail stand to prevent any kind of tail tipping. Here's another example of it, of a 747. Yep, that happened too. The whole point of the tail stand, once again, to prevent the aircraft from tipping backwards. CG, center of gravity of aircraft, are very important. Next office. All right, just got done servicing oil on this one. Do a quick little walk around, but I think this one stays here. This one came in and it's gonna stay overnight for maintenance. Not much happening today. I know, guys, not a very exciting day, but you know what? I'll take easy days. Why not? Looking good. Somebody asked, what are those little holes on the intake cowling? Right here. These little things. They have a very particular name, and the name is pip pin holes. The reason they are there is for installation of intake cowling covers. There's a very specific pin that will fit into this and lock into place. This is what we usually do when we install cowlings, and covers onto the intake to protect the engine while storage. Here's a good example of it. This is a small clip from LX-Photos on YouTube. You guys can find him over here. So he's also an aircraft maintenance engineer. There's another set of screws that somebody mentioned, and the label is literally right there. Hoist points. These are hoist points when the nose cowling is being removed. We will install a very specific sling on both sides, and when the nose cowling is being detached from the fasteners, it will get removed with a sling, and the sling is attached right there. They're on both sides. You can see right there. Hoist points are all over the aircraft. There's multiple amount of hoist points all over the aircraft in various components such as flaps, ailerons, engines, whatever. They're all over the place. Now, I can't remember who asked to see this, but somebody wanted to see the rain repellent for the Airbus. Well, that's the rain repellent button that will spray it onto the windshield, but the actual rain repellent is back here. That's it. I do not know the chemical composition of what is inside that rain repellent, but all I know is that it acts much like Rain-X. When pilots push the button, it will spray onto the windshield and will beat up the water. Here's a good example of how we change that bottle. The bottle is held on by two bands. Simply loosen and then unscrew the bottle itself. Very simple to do. Once we get the old one out, we install the new one, screw it back in, make sure the pressure is correct, ops check it, and good to go. This is a port for the aircraft nav data loading. All of the navigational data that the pilots have is done by maintenance. That's right. We are uploading the latest and greatest information to the aircraft so the pilots can fly the airplane correctly. We utilize this port, which is called the cannon plug, and we install particular software to the aircraft that is updated to all the systems. Well, this brings back some memories. In the olden days, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, and even before that, we used to actually upload nav data via floppy disk. And I tell you what, that was a pain. That was a nightmare. God forbid you got a corrupted disk and you uploaded something like that. Don't worry, the airplane will let you know because it will just reject the data. But you would sit there for hours on end trying to upload data. Oh my goodness, it was horrible. Nowadays, it's much more sophisticated. All you have to do is hook up a very sophisticated piece of equipment with data already preloaded and just upload the information to the aircraft. But yeah, it just brought back memories from floppy disks. It was just crazy back then. But what are you going to do? That's the technology we had back then. All right, Jerry, go for it. Close the door. All right, man. Lock the door. There it is. That's why that light is there. All right, unlock it. Lock it. There you go. Okay, a little bit of context here. So the 320 family overhead panel has a light that's called toilet. And as you can see, as soon as the forward lavatory gets locked, that means somebody's in there and it says occupied. Pretty much most major carriers, most major manufacturers have this feature. I'm going to show you this later on a 787. It's a little bit different over there. The whole point behind this is to let the pilots know that there's somebody in the forward lavatory, because that's literally right behind them. First of all, it will notify them, hey, I cannot get up and go use the lavatory because it's occupied. Number two, for security reasons, because they know that somebody is right there in that lavatory. Well, see? Pretty cool, huh? That's it. We're coming up on our last flight. This was a 787, and this was outbound to Miami, if I remember correctly. But I remember somebody asking, they wanted to see the crew rest quarters as well as the flight crew rest quarters. So let's go check it out. This is where the flight attendants sleep on the 787. It's all the way in the back. It's very cramped. It's not like the 777. The 777 is much more comfortable. Over here on the 787, you have bunks just like the 777, but very much more cramped environment. Same amenities. You have oxygen bottles, you have smoke detectors, you have every kind of communication device that's needed, but in a very much more cramped environment. To all my flight attendants that are out there that fly on the 787, tell me how you feel about this. What do you like? What do you dislike about this? At the end of the day, the whole point is to get some rest because, again, much like flight crew, cabin crew also needs to have rest. They take shifts. This is the flight crew quarters on the 787, 2 bunks, and also a lazy boy that's on to the backside. You'll see this right now. But they get the same type of amenities, any kind of emergency equipment, smoke detectors, communication devices, everything. That's all standard. This is directly aft of the forward galley within the 787. You'll notice me saying, if I remember somebody asking, because you guys ask a lot of questions, which I love, and I want to provide the visuals for you. So once again, somebody asked about the galley equipment within an aircraft. This is the one I had available right now, the 787. So these are the galley equipment right here. It's pretty standard. I mean, coffee makers, water heaters, lots of storage compartments all over the place. The storage is a lot. I'm going to tell you this right now. There's a ton of storage within aircraft. They're all over the place. You also have amenities such as, faucets for water right there. And you have trash bins and shut-off valves in case we have to defer some portions of the water compartment. But you also have ovens for heating up your food for long-haul flights. Pretty much any aircraft you walk onto, most galleys look exactly the same. Spacing and sizing may vary, compartments may vary, but the amenities such as coffee makers, ovens, all stay the same. It's pretty much standard all across. And obviously galley carts. This is where you keep your food and your drinks, and there's a refrigeration unit that keeps all of that cool. Bigger aircraft have multiple galleys. They'll have an aft galley, they'll have a mid galley, they'll have a forward galley, but they all have the same equipment. All right, let's end our night with a beautiful plastic princess. It's good. This is a quick turn. I believe this thing's going out to Miami. So just got to put the oils that I serviced into the logbook, make sure there's no inbound discrepancies, but otherwise, so far so good. She's a good, healthy bird. Hope you guys had fun. I'll see you bright and early in the morning. Don't forget the coffee. Later. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to another beautiful day. Come on, it's gonna be fun. Take a little stroll. With the coffee, obviously. My absolute favorite thing to do in the morning, once I get my assignments, I know where I'm working, I just love to take a stroll down the ramp. I want to look at the airplanes. I want to enjoy the environment. I want to enjoy the beauty of it all. It's such an incredible experience to be here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love the smell of jet fuel in the morning. It smells like victory. But since we're here soaking up all this beautiful victory, let's talk about more stuff. That's right, the aft end of the 787, especially where the APU exhaust is, right there. Focus your attention on that little piece of metal that's sticking out. That's not just there to make it look pretty, that has a function. In the older models of the 787, that actually was not there. That's a modification that you're seeing. That is called the APU fuel drip shield. In the initial design, that little drip shield, that piece of metal that's underneath the APU exhaust, was not there. But what would end up happening is that fuel will build up and pool in the exhaust area of the APU after shutdown. Fuel could not escape anywhere. So when they started the APU back up again, you would see this big fireball come out the back end. It would scare the heck out of everybody. But Boeing decided, okay, we need to design something that will evacuate that fuel out of that exhaust nozzle. They built this aerodynamic plate so the fuel will not sit there and pool up. It will go away right after shutdown. All right, here's a fun one for you. Have you guys ever noticed on a 737, and this is an 800, I believe 900s are the same way, so are the Maxes. If you pay attention to the windows, most of these aircraft will always have a gap right there. It'll skip a window or two. You notice it right there? There's a reason for this. There's riser ducts coming up from there, your air conditioning ducts, because there's a big manifold in the belly for the air conditioning system, and you have ducts that are rising up through the walls, so they had no choice but to skip a window or two. So I think it's like around seat 13 or 14, somewhere around there, depending on interior configuration. But yeah, sometimes you get a seat with no window. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. But yeah, sometimes you'll see a gap. Now, here's what the gap looks like. And this is all the distribution. And the main gap, which is the main distribution manifold, is right there, right where the windows get skipped. Now on a 787, it's a little bit different. I'm going to show you something real cool over there. Now on a 787, the distribution system for the air conditioning is very well routed and it's very complex. It looks like this. When I say complex, I mean it. It's a rat maze. But you miss sometimes windows like this for a very specific reason. Can you see it? It's the seam. It's the structural seam of the aircraft. You can't put a window right at the seam. Interesting, right? You'll see it over here in the front as well. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, beautiful GENX right there. There you go. Another seam right there. See? No window. You can't put a window at a seam. Here we go, back into an Airbus, another happy airplane status. Normal. There you go. Here's it looking beautiful. Well, it so happened to be Sunday, and it was Mother's Day. Unfortunately, I was working, but I know my mom is watching. Believe it or not, my mom watches my YouTube videos, and I just want to tell you, Mom, I love you. I love you so much, and thank you for giving me everything in my life and bringing me into this world. I wouldn't be here without you. I wouldn't be the man that I am without you. Thank you, Mom. I love you. Next office, back to the 787. This was a super quick turn. Came in from Miami, going right back out to Miami. Get some oil, do a walk around, make sure everything's A-okay. Ain't that beautiful? That's a work of art right there. Let's take a look at the 787 wing, and I want you to take particular attention to the wing tip and what's underneath it. Let's zoom in right here. You see that little red dot? That's a component. That is a pressure relief valve for the fuel tank. The primary purpose of this is for venting fuel. The fuel vent system vents outside the airplane through a flame arrestor and a vent scoop. That's the thing right next to it. The surge tank, which is at the tip of the wing, the surge tank has a tank pressure relief valve that operates in case if the flame arrestor is blocked. That little valve will relieve pressure. It's an equalizer of pressure for the surge tank. All right, let's see how this is. Just serviced oils. The parameters look pretty good. Hydraulics look good. Like I said, a quick turn. Yeah, as it should be. As I've told you before, all of that is there because the adderers are not aligned. Once these get turned to on position, all of that will go away. And here's what it looks like on the 787 when the forward lav is occupied. If you remember from the Airbus one, it was on overhead. This one's on the door page. There it is. Some context right here. So obviously the lav occupied is what I talked about before. Forward lavatory is occupied. On the 787, the indication comes out on the door page. But let's talk about the rest of this page right here. So anything that is amber, that is circled in amber, that means that door is open. So the L2 entry and the forward cargo door are open, hence why it looks like it's open. You get an amber circle around it and an indication like that. Now pay attention to this, the one that says M next to the 1L, 1R, 2R. Those doors are closed, but the M stands for a very particular reason. The M is meaning that the door is closed and latched, but the slide is not armed. It's in manual mode. The slide is in a disarm position, hence why you get that indication. Airbus does it a little bit differently. This is the way that Boeing does it on this particular aircraft. So there you go. Next office. All right, got 777. This actually came in with the inbound. We got a gear indication system. Let's find out what the problem is. We need to go through the MAT, the maintenance access terminal. So let's go, let's boot this up. The maintenance access terminal is our direct key on this 777 to access the aircraft and its logistics and how to troubleshoot. Right now, I am troubleshooting ATA chapter 32, which has got to do with landing gear. At this particular moment, I utilized my manuals and found the troubleshooting code and found what exactly I needed to bite check. Built-in test equipment. The aircraft is so self-sufficient that it has its own built-in test equipment. I simply needed to run the test on the PSEU, proximity sensors. The reasoning for this fault is sometimes the aircraft, when it lands, it does not land all together, as in not all gears touch at the same time. Sometimes you have one gear or the main landing gear touch one time, on the left side or the right, and it will cause a discrepancy. I need to perform an operational check to make sure that the sensors are not failing. So as soon as I did that, I performed the operational check of the system. Everything came back clean. No faults, nothing noted. I even looked back into the history of the aircraft. We have a database of information. I didn't see any kind of discrepancies within 30 days of flight. That means the aircraft is good to go. Sometimes these little hiccups occur and aircraft produces a fault. We can do these kind of troubleshooting tactics and clear the fault and let the aircraft go back to being airworthy. As soon as the aircraft is starting to produce some kind of a trend within faults, that's when we get concerned. That's when we will probably ground the aircraft or change out a part. But otherwise, when something like this happens, it's not a big deal. It's just some nuisance fault where we can clear it and let the aircraft keep on going on its way.
We're wasting no time. Good, looking good.
I think I pretty much talked to death of what's in here. How about a smiley face this time? There you go. Drop the HUD down. Drop the HUD down. Okay, engage it. So let's see, let me get in front of you. Let me see if it's engaged. You know, I like to talk. I like to talk a lot, and sometimes I talk too much. And I especially like to talk around my younger technicians. I want to tell them everything I know, just like I want to tell you everything I know. I need to pass on this knowledge. I'm not going to gatekeep this. I'm not going to hoard my knowledge. What am I going to do? Take it to the grave with me? No, it'd be useless. I'd rather share it with the world. Let the world understand and let the next generation of technicians or individuals who are enthusiastic about aviation understand what it takes to become an aircraft maintenance technician, as well as understand aircraft systems, whether they want to be a pilot or anything else within the aviation industry. I am your biggest fan. Trust me when I tell you this. I am your biggest fan when I tell you that I want you to succeed in everything that you do in regards to aviation. I will always give you my knowledge. I will always open my mind to you, and I always have my mind open to learn as well from you. I have the honor of sitting here and showing something to a young technician that is incredible and wise and wanting to learn and explain a system that is there. It's in the manuals, but sometimes it takes a senior technician to explain it in a different way, and it opens their eyes up to more things. My job is to fix. My job is to teach. My job is to make sure the aircraft go out safe and push the knowledge out to the next generation. I will do it. I guarantee you I will do it. I'm going to stop my bantering here, and I'll let young Jesse over here explain what we're seeing here.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, now press that button. What happened?
That's the HUD declutter. It gets rid of my airspeed, which would be on my left, and my altitude should be on my right. So right now I press it again, and then you can see we got the bar, which indicates how fast we're going and how high we are.
Perfect.
Press it again, it declutters it. Hence, the HUD declutter button.
HUD declutter button on the Plastic Princess. Good job, my man. Well, that's about it, folks. That was a nice long day. Hope you guys all had fun. Learned a few things and saw some cool airplanes. I'll see you guys on the next adventure. Later.
What more can I say? The only thing I can say is thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all the kind words and all the love and all the appreciation. You guys are the reason that this channel is growing, and I hope you guys are all learning and enjoying everything that I show. I want to be there for you. I want to educate you, and I want you to educate me. Because trust me, I am not the smartest person on this planet. No, I'm not. You guys teach me so much. Even I get things wrong, and when I see it in the comments, I revert and I correct myself. So make sure to read the descriptions and the pinned comments in case I do mess up. But overall, I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is an incredible journey, and I am glad you're here with me on this journey. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Lost for words. Stig, signing out. I'll see you guys on the next adventure. Later.